All right. Well, welcome everybody. That was fun. And a beautiful teaching of best laid plans, right? This is what life does to us all the time, is we have it figured out a certain way and then something unexpected happens. The Buddha calls it impermanence. And it's what our mind does with the change that matters. Do we freak out? Are we berating ourselves or others? Are we worried? Are we complaining because we're outside and it's a little bit chilly? Or are we like, oh, that happened, let's roll with it. And this is the primary teaching of the Buddha. The Buddha taught suffering and the cessation of suffering. Everything the Buddha taught is about that core, simple, profound teaching, which is suffering and the cessation of suffering. How do we suffer? We suffer when our mind reacts to reality with distaste. Our mind says, oh no, I don't want this to be happening. Whether it's trivial, a small delay in getting in the room is pretty trivial, or whether it's major, death, cancer, tremendous loss. How our mind interacts with change determines whether we're suffering in the mind or at peace in the mind. So this was a lovely little test for all of us. And notice, without judgment, without unkindness, notice what your mind did with that unexpected. Was it fairly peaceful? Oh, okay, well, we'll wait a while, that's fine. Was it under distress, particularly if you're part of the organizing committee? Did you make a story for yourself of we're letting people down, or you know, we should have known better, or this is terrible? Our minds often do that when we feel and we're usually not, by the way, but we feel we might be harming someone else. When I pulled up, Neil looked, I must say, a bit flustered. He looked a bit sweaty and flustered. And he was walking towards his car, and I said to Richard, oh, maybe Neil has to go to work or something. I thought maybe you'd been here to open up and you had to go, because why else was he walking towards his car? Normally he's up here. And I'm like, hi. And he said, oh, I guess you didn't get all the messages. And I said, no. And I'm extremely grateful I didn't get all the messages. Because if half an hour or so ago I had looked at the infernal device, I'm pretty good at not looking at the infernal device. I was coming to teach Dharma. I don't want to check my phone. There might be something distracting on it. I want my mind to be here for you all and me all. So if I had checked my phone, let's say half an hour ago, I might have had some consternation in the mind. I might have thought, oh no, I hope everybody's okay, and felt badly for the organizers that maybe they were, a little ruffled, and I might have worried a little bit on the drive. I'm not sure if I would have or wouldn't have. It would depend how solid the mind was in that moment. I might have been, oh, I'm sure it'll work out, or that's okay, or I might have thought, oh dear, that's unfortunate, I hope everybody's all right. Instead, I came up blissfully unaware. And I said to Neil, do you have a sense of how long, are we talking 5 minutes or 20 minutes until the key is delivered, I guess? And he said, I think probably 6 to 10 minutes. I said, great, how about do some warm-up stretches? And he lit up and said, sure. And we made lemonade out of lemons. Wow, it was almost a big disaster. So we're going to meditate in a moment, but Dharma is about dealing with reality. And given that this lovely little, we could call it almost a test, happened. So thank you, key holder, for giving us all a chance to look at our minds. It's fantastic. When things happen in life that are not what we expect, it's where the Dharma rubber hits the road. We can all come here beatifically on our Saturday mornings and frankly feel a little bit proud of ourselves that instead of going to do something that might frankly sound more fun this morning, we're coming to hear Dharma and to train our minds, because something inside us wants to be more free. Something inside us wants to suffer less. That's why we come. And to come and have a locked door, the mind can really trip out on that, right? Judgment. Well, they should be more organized. What's up with these people? Right? Or, oh, I knew it wouldn't work out for me. Nothing ever works out for me. Or, is Cheryl going to be angry? Or, whatever the stories are. So I ask you, you don't have to share it with anybody else. But I ask you, what was your story? Was it gentle? Was it curious? Was it kind? Was it anxious? A lot of us get anxious, myself included, if I have an expectation and it's not working out the way I thought it would. So take this lovely little episode of spending a few minutes waiting, our expectations not being quite met the way we thought, and look at yourself. And particularly if you're part of the organizing committee, were you kind to yourself, or did you worry, or were you, unkind to yourself, thinking, oh no, this is a big problem? It's not. It's a small impermanence that ceases to exist. It's no longer here. So if I was clever enough, I would have engineered this on purpose. I would have done a stealthy phone call and said, hey guys, let's test everybody's mind stream. Let's pretend we don't have the key and watch what happens. How much greed, hatred, and delusion come up in each of our minds. So, what a delight. But I must say, I am glad. Are we recording? Uh-oh. I was sort of hoping it was off. I must say, for myself, and I do like to share my own foibles and struggles on the path to help, I hope, ground us all in the fact that none of us are perfect, and I'm certainly not an awake being. But I'm more awake than I used to be. But there are times or days where if I'd seen the messages, I would have had quite a bit of worry about it. Probably not annoyance. It wouldn't have been so much, oh, they messed up. It would have been, oh no, is everybody okay? Are the students going to be frustrated? And so I'm glad I didn't see the messages. I'm in a pretty good state today, so I think it would have been more like, well, we'll figure it out, right? I kind of wish it was pouring. I kind of wish your challenge was a little more unpleasant. That had been like pouring rain and really cold. And you would have been like, my cat when he comes in from the pouring rain. You would have been all like this when I got here. Right? Miserable, wet kitty cat. So, blessings on you all, and thank you from the bottom of my heart and the hearts in the room to the half dozen or so people on the organizing committee. We always need and welcome more help on an ongoing or a one-off basis that make all this happen, and found the key. So, lovely. That was all by way of preamble. That was the warm-up act. Now, as I pick cat and dog hair off the robe. Oh dear, oh dear. Let's open formally, and we'll have a sit together. We'll meditate together, and then I'll offer a continuation of the theme that the universe so beautifully delivered to us today, which is how to work with the poisons in the mind. Poison's a pretty heavy word, but it's a translation, and we can also call it the negative or the troublesome mind states. How do we deal with those in our minds when they arise? Because they do. So that'll be the theme, beautifully led into by this morning's events. Lovely. Thank you for your practice. And for those of you to whom this is fairly new, that's a really nice way to start to develop a meditation practice at home, is to go through that 4-step funnel. So you sit down to practice for 10 minutes or 30 or 45, and the mind is often all over the place, right? This is the natural tendency of the mind. It's what keeps us safe as we drive here, is scanning and attending and being aware and filtering out that which isn't currently important and focusing on that which is more important, getting safely home, swerving if a deer runs across the road. This is a natural state of the mind. So when we sit down and say, okay, mind, stop doing that, please. Focus intently on one thing. It's not surprising that unless you've got a really well-developed practice, and even when you do, the mind may rebel a little bit. So this is a lovely way to kind of say, oh, okay, mind, let's gradually tighten our focus. So what's presently happening? You're allowed to roam. Just focus on present. Oh, thinking about my foot. I'm noticing sound. I'm noticing the warmth on my elbow here. It's beautiful as the sun streams in. And now the second step, narrowing the focus to anything and all in the physical sensory body. Attempting to let thoughts be in the background and not capture our attention. So the warmth, the feeling of my ankles right now, swinging a little bit. The hands, again, touching. The breath coming in and out as I speak. That's the second narrowing, just physical sensation. Then the third, letting go of allowing the attention to focus on arms and legs and warmth on the shoulder, and asking it to attend primarily to sensations associated with breathing. And then the fourth and final, which is tip of the nose. That's because later in your meditation practice, if you're meditating on breath, anapanasati, having focus at the tip of the nose can be quite helpful down the road. For a lot of us, including this person, me, that wasn't helpful for me at the beginning. If I tried to focus on the tip of the nose, my brain got busier. For me, it was much more steadying to focus on my belly or my chest. So from the evidence of your own experience, you adjust to what is most skillful wherever your mind is at for that sit, or wherever your mind is at in terms of a larger training through the years. Okay? There isn't a right and a wrong. There's an encouragement, a training, an invitation to train that mind to develop another strength, not its foundational strength that's well developed, which is the attention scanning and landing, scanning and landing, scanning and landing. But to develop that parallel complementary aspect of attention that is usually quite weak for many of us, which is focus. Allow me to say, and this is an observation you will have all made, I suspect, without my help, that in the last decade or so, that sustained attention is becoming even less easy or more difficult because of the influence and inundation of data. It wasn't that long ago that if you watched a television program, you were allowed to watch the television program. Now, the bottom third of your screen may have a moving image video previewing the thing that's coming up next. That's split attention. It's training your attention to split and to scan. The show I'm watching, oh, that's coming next. The show I'm watching, well, look at that awful image I don't want to see. Often what's coming next is a program you wouldn't choose to consume. You know, a very violent program, and there's this like awful image at the bottom of your, I don't know, cartoon, happy program or something. So more and more with our devices and the way data is inundated in a split focus way, our attention's even more beleaguered than it used to be. When you used to watch the program, right? How do we let this happen, by the way? What did we do about it? When the television broadcasters started bringing in like a third of your screens, or it's an ad. Now there's ads. A third of your screen while you're watching your chosen program has other information to pull your attention back and forth. So it's not your fault. It's not that you're a bad meditator or your mind is broken or you have poor willpower or you're lazy. The mind is even more trained in our modern digital age to jump, to scan, to be inundated. So it is what it is. But you get to train your mind within it should you choose. Right? So there you go. Here we are. It's sunny. I did not expect this. This is pleasant. But what if it was filthy out? That can be pleasant too, if the mind's pleasant. So let's talk about this absolutely fantastic preamble that the universe gave us this morning, is what do our minds do with information? And when do we suffer and when are we free from suffering, or at least neutral? So I was already open-handedly holding gently the idea I might teach on the 3 poisons this morning, so this worked out beautifully. So the 3 poisons, again, a rather heavy word, but an important word. In Buddha Dharma, the Buddha taught that there are 3 poisonous mind states, 3 root causes. The 3 roots, the root defilements, the root negative emotions are, as the name root implies, it is the root of all of our distressed, unpleasant, unhappy mental experience. All of our negative emotions, all of our troublesome thoughts are boiled down in Buddha Dharma to 3 roots, 3 causal factors. So if you can learn to define those 3 roots, if you can learn to search for them and find them in the mind, you're in very good state. Why? Because if you can find the root poison, you can pull it out. Or at least you could trim it back. At least you can reduce its power. Wait, some of you that don't know what the 3 roots are. What are they, Cheryl? What are they, Cheryl? I can barely wait. That's the way you should be feeling, and this is why. You should be very excited about this. Because if we know the 3 root causes of our suffering, ... we can do something about it. If we know the poison, we can apply an antidote. Hurrah! We can start to break down the suffering in the mind when we're in a state of suffering and find the root and apply an antidote, and therefore what? Shift the mind state. Reduce or eliminate the suffering. Turn a defiled, painful state into perhaps a warm, sunny state. To feel the beautiful root qualities of positive when we can find the negative. So, another way to teach this is the way I lay it out in the book. Yet, a lot of you know, this is not a sales pitch. I had my first book was published, a month ago today actually, because it was on the 2nd. And in there's a chapter where I talk about the poisons in a way that I hope is really easy to remember and very easy to apply in your own life, in your own relationships. And I call them the 3 mind demons. So we're going to work with that idea because it's quite graspable, I hope, anyway. The 3 root poisons, according to the Buddha, the 3 root unwholesome, difficult, or suffering states, are greed or wanting. I want something other than what's present. Right now, if we're very content with exactly what's happening, we're not suffering. We're good. Feel good. Feel pleasant, maybe happy. There's no suffering in the mind, because whatever's happening is just fine the way it is. And that's a lovely state. It's a state you're familiar with. And the difficulty for most of us is that state doesn't last continuously. At some point, often very quickly, sometimes we can sustain that kind of neutral or happy state for a while, then the mind wants something. It wants something other than what's present. So something as pleasant as heat on my shoulder, which currently feels really pleasant. It's lovely, especially because this is my sore side. And I've got this lovely warmth because Wendy just adjusted it just so on my shoulder and my neck. Feels lovely. But what is quite likely to happen in a few minutes? It might start to feel too warm. It might start to feel a little less comfortable. And then the mind might feel like, I want it to be just the way it was, where it was just right. Like Goldilocks, right? Goldilocks is a great teaching. Too hot, too cold, just right. Then she gets eaten by a bear because she's an idiot. But essentially, she's dukkha. She's a person running around trying to make things just right so she won't suffer. This is what we're Goldilocks. We run around wanting it to be just so we won't suffer. Too soft, too hard, just right. Eaten by a bear. So that's not a great life plan. The first poison is greed or wanting. I want something other than what's happening. It's very subtle sometimes. You might be having the perfect cup of tea and the perfect little cookie, and your environment's lovely, and you don't have any appointments. It's just lovely. You're just in a nice state, and your tea's lovely, and the cookie's lovely, and then you kind of vaguely, teeny tiny bit wish you had a second cookie, right? And it's small. I mean, to use the word suffering toward it seems a bit foolish, but suffering's one translation of the word dukkha. Another is unsatisfactoriness. So you're really happy. You've enjoyed your cup of tea. You've enjoyed your cookie. You just kind of wish there was another cookie. And there's like a 1% deflation in your good state. That's all. It's just a tiny bit of unsatisfactoriness. That's a subtle manifestation of wanting something else. And it's a type of suffering. Right? So, if you wanted the door to be unlocked 15 minutes before class, there was a little bit of suffering in the mind because it wasn't what you wanted. So the first root poison or first foundation of negative mind states, of psychological suffering, of difficulty, is wanting something other than what's present. The greedy demon. Right? I want something other than this. Yum, 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 yum. The second root poison or root cause of negative states is the angry demon. It's aversion, anger, or not wanting. And these two dance very closely together, almost like they're Siamese twins. Because aversion or anger or not wanting is I don't want what's happening. So I can long for more warmth, and I can dislike being too cold, sort of at the same time, right? So angry demon, aversion, not wanting. I do this with my hand intuitively because it's a pushing away. We're trying to push away the experience that's happening. We don't want it. We don't want to hear that our medical tests came back with scary results. We don't want our partner to be going on the business trip on our anniversary weekend that they've just kind of dropped on us casually. Oh, I'll be in Washington, D.C. on our anniversary. What? I don't want that. Aversion. I don't want that. We don't want the door to be locked when we wish it to be open. All this stuff, all day long, when we're not wanting, we suffer. There's some negativity or some dissatisfaction or sometimes agony or pain. What if someone you love and want to be in a romantic relationship with dumps you, breaks up with you, walks away, goes to be with someone else? We don't want that to happen. We've got a mixture of greedy demon, come back, love me, I want it to be a certain way. And we've got a mixture of angry, aversive demons saying, this can't be happening, this is wrong, you're terrible, you're deluded, come back, because that's the third demon. The third demon is deluded or confused demon. The third poison, according to the Buddha, is confusion or delusion. Not understanding the nature of reality means we're confused. That's a pretty big statement. Not understanding the nature of reality. What the heck does that mean? Not understanding the nature of reality means not accepting what is actually occurring. So, if what's actually occurring is the person you love has broken your relationship and left, that's reality. It may or may not change later. The person may come back, or you may, that's later. But right now the reality is, Jane or John has broken up with me. Our relationship is over. Now, what would happen if none of the three poisons were present? You weren't wanting it to be different. You just accepted it the way it was. You weren't hating that it happened and trying to push away the pain. You just accepted that this is kind of sad. And you weren't confused. The third demon's the most important one. The third demon trumps the other two. Because if you see the nature of reality as it is, this has happened, it's unpleasant. You don't have to suffer. What? If you accept the reality that is, even if it's unpleasant or terrible, you don't suffer. That's a pretty big idea. So let's take a big example. What if we all find out, I hope we don't, on Monday morning, that we have cancer? There's probably a good number of people in the room who have that reality in their own body or someone they love's body right now. Okay, it's Monday morning. All of us get the news that there is cancer in the body, cancerous cells in the body. This is the reality in those moments. It is true. Let's say it's accurate. The test isn't wrong. That doesn't mean we're necessarily going to die earlier than we would have. It doesn't mean that we might not be able to get treatment that could eradicate the cancer and we could become cancer-free. That's all to be seen in the future. It also doesn't mean that we're not going to die in short order. Several of us know persons who've died within 2 or 3 months of a cancer diagnosis when it was highly advanced, right? So if the reality is, my doctor says, Cheryl, there's cancer, it's this type. In that moment, and this is a big leap, and I'm not saying I'd manage it skillfully because I'm not fully awake yet. But in that moment, if I simply accept the truth of that reality, that the tests show there's cancer present in the body, there's no need to suffer. There isn't. This is so. That doesn't mean I'm a fool, and it doesn't mean that I like the reality. The Buddha would say pleasant or unpleasant. In fact, an often quoted quote of the Buddha is, I know the pleasant for the pleasant and the unpleasant for the unpleasant, which means I can acknowledge the truth of reality, know that it's unpleasant, but not suffer. The suffer comes in if the demons come in. If I cling to wanting to be cancer-free, if I have aversion to having this diagnosis, if I'm deluded and I don't accept reality and I run into all sorts of other realities where if only I hadn't smoked when I was a young person, or I'm going to die for sure really soon, and some of that may come true. But in the moment, if the mind says, okay, reality, unpleasant reality, I'll be with it with grace, with calm, with heart, and with love. You could be calm and open and happy while you're digesting this diagnosis, which arguably sets you up to more wisely and skillfully move forward and make choices about what to do, about treatment, about modifying your work schedule, about figuring out how you'll work with this new reality. That's a huge example. So let's bring it back to a more attainable example for most of us here and now, which is arriving and the door is locked, and there's a short delay till the door is unlocked. So the mind can say, okay, that's the reality. It's either pleasant or unpleasant or neutral. For some it might have been unpleasant, and for some it was probably neutral, and maybe for some it was pleasant. Oh, it's really nice to be outside with these lovely people for a few minutes, and this is kind of nice. The reality is what it is, and it's only how we react to it that makes it miserable. This is a very big teaching, because it says that the key to happiness, the key to well-being, the key to being free of mental suffering is entirely in our own mind. It's not based on the cancer diagnosis or the locked door or winning the lottery or getting a new puppy or all the good and troublesome, the positive and negative, the pleasant and unpleasant things that happen in our lives. What can you do in a practical everyday sense about the three poisons? Greed or wanting, aversion or anger or not wanting, and deluded confusion about the nature of what is, the truth of reality. You can start to try to spot the mind demons. You can notice, oh, I feel a bit edgy and unpleasant. What demon is present? Oh, wanting. I want to leave work early and go home and be comfy. Okay, that's what's happening. That's why I feel a little edgy or agitated and clock watching maybe. You're feeling sad, you're feeling blue, you can check what's going on. I'm really missing my friend. Okay, so there's some greed toward wanting your friend to be there, and maybe some aversion to being alone happening. A little bit of greedy demon, a little bit of anger demon. Okay. Can you hold the demons gently? The way I talk about this in the chapter in the book is, don't hate your demons. They're trying to keep you safe. They're trying to defend you against pain. If only we could get this, we'll feel better. Or I don't want that, so we'll feel better. They're actually not our enemies if we can love them. If we can spot the demon and say, okay, I'm longing and that's creating some suffering. Hey, thank you for trying to, make me feel better, mind state of greedy demon, but we're okay. Let's just bring it back to saying whatever is right now is good enough for right now. I'm going to bring this to our relationships, not necessarily our romantic relationship, although that's what the book focuses on, any and all relationships, friends, colleagues, co-workers, family members, etc. When I want something from you, I'm in greedy demon. I want you to be more romantic. I want you to clean up the dishes. I want you to be a more appreciative daughter or son. I want you to do your share of the work on the project at work instead of dumping it all on my desk. I want something other than what's present. When I want something other than what's present, I'm in greedy demon, and I'm looking to you to give me something or do something or affect something that will make me feel better. That doesn't always work so well. You notice that? Have any of you been able to train your family members or your loved ones to do exactly what you want all the time? Obviously not. It's a solution for madness. I mean, it's never going to work. That equation isn't going to work. If I could just control everybody around me to be exactly the way I want them to be, I'll be happy. So let's come back to reality. With our human relationships, we're in greed when we want something from that other person. We want them to do something differently. And it doesn't work very well. And when we stay in that state, we suffer. Remember what the Buddha taught. Suffering and the cessation of suffering. Everything related to Buddha Dharma ultimately is showing us the keys to how we suffer in our mind and how we can move towards the door to freedom. The door is wide open. You can walk through it. We hopefully aspire to at least move in the general direction of the room in which the open door is. Sometimes we walk right through it and we have freedom for a period of time. And then we get pulled back into our patterns and we maybe do some more work. We do some more meditation, work with our heart more, work with Dharma more, because this is an ongoing training. In our human relationships, the first poisonous mind state of greed, greedy demon, that's how it plays out. In our human relationships, the second poisonous mind state of aversion or anger or not wanting, pushing away, that plays out a lot too. I won't ask for a show of hands, but has anyone other than me, because I certainly feel this way sometimes, ever felt angry at someone you love? Have you ever felt aversion to someone you love? There's a phrase that one marriage therapist uses, which is a very dark phrase, but a lot of people resonate with it. He calls it basic marital hatred. Ouch. Ouch. But is it that unfamiliar? That when you're fully in the grips of angry demon, you feel glimpses, temporary states based on flooded bodies and minds, but temporary states of like, I hate this person. I can't stand them. I can't stand the way they chew their toast. I've been listening to this for 27 years. They smack their lips. They're like a cow chewing their cud. Basic marital hatred. This is a state. I'm not making this up. That's why you're laughing. It's a little too familiar. Our mind's in the state of angry demon, aversion demon, contempt, criticism, yuck, which predict divorce, by the way, so you should work with those and shift them. Yes, all of us, myself included, for sure. Catch that demon of dislike or just annoyance. It doesn't have to be really ugly to me. Oh, you're so annoying. Guess what? Newsflash, they're never annoying. Your mind is annoyed. It's not the same thing. You're so annoying. It just means my mind's in angry demon. My mind's in aversion. My mind doesn't like what you're doing or saying or being or chewing, etc. Holy bananas. This is liberating. This means I can work with my annoyed mind, which will be a lot more effective than trying to train you to not be annoying. Because that's a lifetime job that I haven't had success in training my partner or friends to be unannoying. Have you? No, it doesn't work very well. But I've had a little bit of success at training my own mind to be less annoyed. To catch my mind when it's an angry demon. To catch it when it's in aversion, not liking, picking at. Doing this wrong, you're doing this wrong, you should do this way. Oh, look at that mind. Look at that mind state of aversion. Anybody in this room have parents at some point in your life? Did you ever have the experience of a parent telling you you were doing stuff wrong and you should do it this way and do it that? Clean up your room, right? Anybody in this room ever been a parent? Have you ever felt yourself in that state? Clean up your room. What's going on in the mind? We're having aversion. We're having angry demon. Angry doesn't have to be angry. It's simply that aversion. I don't care for this. It can be quite gentle. I don't like this. So there's a lot of gradations in each of these mind states, these three poisons. But what if, instead of trying to change reality, the room is messy? The husband's annoying. Instead of trying to change reality, we worked with our own mind. Wow, what is this state of annoyance? It's a bit of a mixture, actually. I feel annoyed and aversive to your chewing. We'll go with that. And I also feel some greedy demons, some longing, some wanting. I want it to be peaceful. in the morning. I want it to be really quiet. I want it to be just gentle. Okay, so and then can you be kind to your own heart? In that moment, you're suffering a little bit. You're a little bit uncomfortable, maybe quite a lot. You might be quite miserable about it, like quite hurting. And go, okay, so the mind states aren't great right now. I'm caught in a couple of poisons, a couple of demons, some wanting and some not wanting, and it's unpleasant. And sometimes when we take that into action and word, it makes us unpleasant to the other person. You're such a messy kid, your room's a pigsty. Or, you're gross. Why do you chew like that? It's disgusting. Oh, there you go. Now you've spread your demon and spread your mind state so it can affect someone you care about. So, okay, I do it. I do it a lot. I am not an awake being yet. You do it, most likely. So this isn't a self-recrimination talk. This is a self-liberation talk. Wow, okay, cool. What demon is present and can I shift it? What's the antidote? I'm going to circle back to the antidotes in a little bit. Haven't mentioned them yet. If you think, did you miss them? Haven't mentioned them yet. Greedy demon, angry demon, confused control demon. If I just change reality, everything will be fine. Doesn't work. I've spent 54 years, maybe not the first couple, trying to change reality to be the way Cheryl Fraser thinks it should be. Right? No one should ever abuse an animal ever again. Kids should never die. There shouldn't be sex trafficking. My neighbor shouldn't be an idiot. Everything. All of it. I don't really have an idiotic neighbor, just in case you're trying to figure out who that is. That one was fictional. This is how rumors get started. I have lovely neighbors, so far anyway. But I've tried really hard to control people, to control reality. Not because I'm a freak, I'm just like you. I try to fix things so I'm happier. If I'm not careful, I try to, make things, if only this would happen, everything would be okay. And that doesn't mean give up. It certainly doesn't mean don't advocate for animal rights, human rights, don't, raise food for the hungry persons in the world. Of course, do all that. But don't fall into the delusion of that you can completely remake reality to be the way you want it to be. Instead, you can remake your mind to be the way you want it to be. And I hope the way you want your mind to be is filled with compassion, generosity, and love, which are the three antidotes. So let's back that up a little and link the antidote to the poison. They're fairly obvious, they're fairly evident, I think, that the antidote to greed, to greedy demon, to wanting, which is generally we want to feel better, so we want whatever we want, is generosity. And not just to other, but also to self. But generosity helps antidote greed. It helps antidote wanting. Can we be generous to other in this moment? Can we be generous to ourselves in this moment? So if I'm feeling I need something from you, you're my friend and I've been very lonely lately and I need you to, go out with me and go to a movie and I'm feeling some real need and greed and wanting. If I'm able to step back and bring some generosity to you as my friend and realize you're busy and have a complicated life right now, you're at a phase of life that's different from mine, you've got a couple young kids, I don't. Instead of working just from my greed and need to be with you, maybe I can say, I wonder how you're doing. And maybe going out to a movie and dinner is a bit off the charts for you right now. How about I phone you and say, hey, I know you're really busy. Could I come by and bring lunch and we can maybe have a break in the day together? Something that simple. And the beautiful thing about generosity in the Buddha Dharma perspective is the Buddha emphasizes it as a two-way street. Generosity is about giving and receiving. We, I think, in English, Western thinking, certainly me, I thought of the word generosity as I give. I take the action of being generous. In Buddha Dharma, you're not a generous being unless you can also receive. So, ironically and beautifully, when we practice the generosity of outgoing, we end up receiving, maybe not in a tit-for-tat, 50-50 immediate rebound way, but by being generous, generosity also comes back. Maybe that moment of connecting with the friend and thinking about her busyness, instead of taking it so personally that she just doesn't want to see me, frees her up to say, thank you so much. I was feeling really guilty about not getting together, but with the kids and I'm trying to sleep train the baby and he's not sleeping. I just couldn't swing. And every time you asked, I felt terrible. So I stopped responding to your texts. I'm sorry. That's okay. That's okay. Can I what is this called? Jiggle the baby for a while? Never had a baby. Jiggle the baby for a while to calm him down. Would that help? Is there a word for jiggling babies other than jiggle? That'll do. So, the antidote to when we're in a selfish, needy, painful mind state is to attempt to practice generosity to other and to ourselves. Can we be kind to ourselves? Wow, there's a lot of need right now and that's painful. Whew, can I bring some generosity to my own good heart right now? The antidote to angry demon, to aversion demon, is kindness and love. Fairly obvious, right? Anger at someone you care about. They're doing it wrong. They're an idiot. They're thoughtless. They're, the stories, the feelings, the hurts we have. Can we spot that? Wow, I'm an angry demon. I'm pushing away. I'm picking. I'm attacking. I'm criticizing. Can I shift that and attempt to bring love to the person I feel annoyed with, which means my mind's in annoyance or anger? And can I instead say, I appreciate you did X today. What would it be if every time we wanted to point out something our spouse did wrong, that instead we searched for something they did right? Beautiful, transformative process. No, I'm not implying you shouldn't have wholesome, difficult conversations about changing some things in your relationships or your friendships. I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying, what would it do toward those difficult conversations if you also practice looking for what your friend does right? Right? I call it the dog biscuit theory of relationship, which is reward what you want instead of always punishing what you don't want. It's fairly simple. Basic psychological conditioning theory, which is instead of, you didn't turn off the light, you forgot the light again. What's with the light? You could say, hey, thank you so much for doing the cooking. I appreciate it deeply. I do notice when you go in the pantry, you tend to leave the light on. How about I put a little sticker on the light switch to help remind you to turn it off? Wasn't that next one much, much, much better? It included a positive reinforcement. It included finding something right about the situation, which is the light in the pantry's left on a lot by the person. Well, why are they in and out of the pantry? Oh yeah, because they're getting stuff to cook your dinner. Why don't you notice that and comment on that first? So the antidote to angry demon, to judgment, to criticism, to not wanting, to aversion, is to practice more love, more positivity, more finding what is right, because the nature of the mind is to find what is wrong. Again, that's evolution. It's not your fault that the mind scans for what's wrong. As many of you have heard me say, that's how cave people and our ancestors stayed alive, by scanning for what was wrong. That's what kept us alive. That's how the genes got passed down. The mellow yellow cave people didn't survive. They got out in the morning and looked around and said, it's a beautiful day, I love being a cave person, and they got eaten because they weren't scanning for what was wrong. This is accurate, by the way. So the genes that got passed on down through the lineages to us were, oh my goodness, what's wrong? Oh my goodness, what's off? What's not working? That's how we stay alive. Like when you're driving, it's useful to notice what's wrong. Oh, there's a wall in the way, I should stop now. That's really useful. So the mind does seek what's wrong. It is it's called the negativity bias. And that is a real thing, and it's there. Some of us more so than others. And some people a little less so than others. So know that the mind is biased towards finding what's wrong. So in your human relationships, the mind is biased after the first flush of falling in love, when your mind is drunk and it's very much focused on what's right. And it's ignoring what's obviously wrong for the first 3 to 6 months of a love affair, by the way. But when you get out of the neurochemical haze, the mind's tendency is to see what's wrong. Oh, they leave the light on in the pantry. It drives me crazy. Hydro bill's too high. Right? Okay. Angry demon. Negativity bias. Instead of opening my mouth and saying, you left the pantry light on again, thanks for cooking, seek to override the negativity bias with love, with kindness. Is this a quick fix? Not for me. It's an ongoing training. But it's a beautiful training, because you got given this mind and you get to train it if you wish. That's why you're here. You want to suffer less. Each and every one of us in this room, I would purport, is here partly or fundamentally because we want to suffer less. We want to experience the mind as a more pleasant place to hang out, and that takes training, and it's a lovely, beautiful, possible thing for each and every one of us. The third demon of confusion or delusion is, as I've been repeating today, fundamentally, it's about all sorts of things, but fundamentally, the moha, it's the Pali word, or the confusion poison that the Buddha teaches, is not being in alignment with the truth of how things are. Trying to fight reality. That's different than giving up. If reality is unpleasant, we should accept that it is real right now and it is unpleasant. That doesn't mean that we can't then take wholesome, skillful, loving action to shift that. That's wise action. But control demon thinks if it controls your mate, your friend, your partner, your work, the weather, everything will be fine. And that's a confused, deluded state that we've all found out over and over and over doesn't yield happiness. What's the antidote to control and delusion? The way I'm teaching it today is the antidote is compassion, particularly when we're trying to control another person. Clean up your room. Don't leave the light on. Be more romantic. Stop being annoying. All the ways we try to control other people. Can we bring compassion to, wait a second, this person has needs too. Wait a second, maybe it hurts them or creates unpleasantness for them when I'm critical. Maybe they have feelings too, which of course you know when you're in your better self, and we forget temporarily when we're on a bit of a rant about how that person and that reality should be different. When we're confused about the nature of reality, which is, gee willikers, another person doesn't see the world exactly the same way you do. They have different preferences, different ideas, different ways of chewing their toast. And that's just fine. So when you can bring your mind into the compassion of, oh, this person has a reality. They sometimes suffer too, just like me. Sometimes they're unhappy, just like me. What can I do to be compassionate and kind and thoughtful and generous to them and to me? Compassion is a gigantic other talk we'll get to one day. Probably not today in the interests of time. So the three poisons, the three roots, the three hetus, the Pali word, some of you are interested in the root words. That's why I sometimes mention them. The three roots, according to the Buddha, when the mind is in a state of discomfort or suffering or negativity or unhappiness or anxiety or sadness or grief or despair or just mild annoyance, mild irritation, slight loneliness, when the mind is in any form of unsatisfactoriness or unhappiness, no matter how mild, one of the three poisons is at work. The mind either wants something that isn't there, doesn't want something that is here, or is confused about the nature of reality and confused at the nature of liberation. This is a bit of a higher teaching now. Confused about the nature of liberation means the mind has forgotten that the Four Noble Truths, the Eightfold Path, the training of freedom from circumstance of the mind, insight into the nature of impermanence and reality are actually the truth of the way things are. We have forgotten how to get out of suffering. We're in samsara. We're in relative suffering. Some of these teachings are familiar to some and brand new to others, but I wanted to salt them in, which is ultimately, when we're in delusion, we have forgotten the true freedom, which is mind freedom. You and I, at this point in medical science and in history, don't have control over cancer cells. We don't. We can influence it to some degree by choosing certain lifestyle practices that may slightly decrease our likelihood of having cancer cells or increase it. But even then, you can do everything right and die from a rapid cancer. You can do everything wrong and live till you're 107 in robust health and fall asleep and die in your sleep. There's no guarantees, right? So the reality is we don't know how long we have in this mortal body from any number of things. Spoiler alert. None of us get out alive. We're all going to die. We're all going to die roughly, there's some real young folks in the room, but roughly 100 years from now, none of us will exist in this form. We'll be food for worms. So, People act surprised. Life is short-ish. How do you want to live it? And when you're happy, it's actually not because things are going well. That can help. Goodness, it can help. If you're in a supportive, loving relationship you enjoy, if your children are doing well, they're healthy, they're enjoying their lives, you like your home, you do work or volunteer in ways that are meaning to you, that all helps, but it's not why you're happy. This is why you're happy. It's all ultimately in the head. And if you develop the ability to spot the demons of distress and change them and work to change them and work to increase the antidotes of generosity, kindness, and compassion, even when the circumstances are dark, difficult, and challenging, your spouse dies, one of your children is going through something really painful and difficult, and that's so hard as you witness their struggles, your work is awful, or you get fired, or it's unwholesome, or you get a really mean boss, all the things that can change in the outer circumstance. If the mind is in alignment, if the mind is richer and more trained and more flexible, you'll suffer less. And you can be in difficult, painful circumstances and still have a mind of peacefulness and kindness and generosity. It's not easy, and in my experience, and for many of you, it's not quick. There may be a few of you that are very blessed and the changes happen very quickly. I hope that's for all of us, that the changes are quick. Understanding this and manifesting it aren't quite automatic. I have a reasonable understanding of these things. I practice them reasonably well, and I fail all the time too. And I suffer far more in the mind than I wish I would after all these years of training. But overall, it's a lot less than I used to. So please be really kind to yourself. On the way out today, you may find yourself in a difficult mind demon. You might be quite annoyed with something, a driver on the way home, or you check your messages and there's an upsetting or difficult thing, and boom, you're in an angry demon. And then when you catch the angry demon, don't say, oh, I just heard all that Dharma and I'm terrible at this. Say, yahoo! I caught the demon. I'm aware what the mind is doing that is making me unhappy. And then attempt with graciousness and patience to apply the antidote. It won't always work. That's okay. It's a training. But attempt to say, okay, what's the antidote to anger? Kindness. Can I be kind to myself? Can I, here's a big one. Most of us don't do this, and it's really interesting to do it. Can I send kindness to that driver that I feel anger toward, who drove in a sloppy or dangerous manner, and it frightened me just now? May they drive safely. May they realize that was an error. May they take good care of themselves and all other drivers on the road. May they have a beautiful day. Apply kindness. Play with these ideas. Try them on. The Buddha said, don't believe anything I say. Try it on, and only through the evidence of your own experience, then trust these teachings. I have unshakable faith that, that if you practice, you will notice some results. They may not be cataclysmic and they may not be immediate. But if you were to take a week or a month and try to catch annoyance and try to bring some kindness to your own mind and kindness to the seeming object of your annoyance, if you were to do that, I don't know, half a dozen times a day for a week, half a dozen times a day for a month, you'll start to notice a little bit of difference. Instead of feeding the angry demon, going home and telling your roommate, your spouse, your friend, there was this idiot driver and they swerved and they almost clipped my bumper. You're just feeding the demon, man. And then feed it more. Put it on Facebook. I can't believe drivers on Vancouver Island. And then all your friends can feed your demon for you. I know, Cheryl. It's like such idiots out there. Who gives, and boom, your whole day's eaten up. That's your bloody fault. I'm sorry, but it is. It's not the driver's fault. It's what you've done with the mind around that circumstance, that reality, that they swerved in and almost clipped your bumper. Now you and your mind get to relate to that reality. What would the Dalai Lama do? What would Mother Teresa do? What would Donald Trump do? Do you want to be Trump? Do you want to be Mother Teresa? It's kind of up to you and the mind state you want to bring to reality. This is very powerful. It's very liberating. It's very hopeful because it means no matter what reality brings us, people, we can be okay. Even dying in pain, we can be okay in our mind. We can be peaceful, we can be loving, we can be calm. Even if the body is shutting down, we can be. I hope to be, if I'm lucky enough to be lucid when dying, meaning it is not an accident and I die instantly or something like that. I'm hoping I'll be able to work with the process of dying with a calm and happy mind. I don't know. We'll see. But it's one of the outcomes of the practice is to do better when transition comes calling. So, mind states, the three poisons: greed or wanting, clinging is another word that's used a lot as a translation. A lot of you are familiar with the word clinging. Aversion or not wanting, and delusion or confusion about the nature of the mind and the nature of reality and the nature of the mind. And the fact that the mind can be clear of clouds at any point, even when there's a ton of clouds. That may sound weird, but even when there's a lot of challenges and disturbances and a lot of demons, under the demons, your mind is actually calm, compassionate, loving, and fair and kind. And so really, you're just looking to spot the clouds for what they are. Temporary phenomenon of unpleasantness that you can work with to dissolve. So, cloud busting, applying the antidotes. These are things you can work with directly in your own life. You can work with it directly today when something annoys you, and the mind gets annoyed or hurt or sad or frightened. Notice, oh, whoa, okay, and be first and foremost kind to yourself for having a mind that isn't liberated yet, unless you're liberated, in which case I bow at your feet with gratitude and delightedness, and I ask you to come teach us. I'm not kidding, I'm not being at all facetious. But if, like me, you're not fully there yet, then work with what you have. Improve and love your mind, your great mind, your beautiful mind. And don't hate the demons. They're just doing their thing of trying to make you feel better. They're just doing it in an unskillful way. And you're going to train them. Train anger into kindness as much as possible. Train greedy selfishness into generosity as much as possible. And trade confused delusion into wisdom and clear seeing and compassion as much as possible. And this is what the path of Dharma is all about. Cessation and the liberation from suffering. So we'll sit together just for 3 or 4 minutes just to close that. Gentle it, let things settle, and then I'll close with a dedication. Just settling in and practicing in whatever manner you wish. If you're not sure what to do, that's very fine. You may want to rest your attention at your belly or your chest or even your nostrils, and just for a few minutes, practice as much as you can, focusing the attention on the sensations of breathing in and out, as they are in this body, in this room, in this moment.